We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Tom was just regaling me with the tale of trimming his beard, so he's looking dapper, folks. You got to come over to YouTube.
I am definitely not looking dapper. That is not the word I would describe. That is it. At this point, it's a war of attrition with this hair on my face. You people with long beards that wear them, why? What is so wrong with your face? And I don't mean this in a bad way, but what is so wrong with your face that you would suffer through a beard? It is the worst. I hate it. Of course, I'm in Florida, and it's like a bajillion degrees.
No kidding.
And 90% humidity, and everything itches, and this is just the worst. But I have now committed myself to having this beard until they release me from my captivity.
I see.
So that when I look at my Facebook feed, I'll go, yep, that was quarantine time. You can tell because I've got a beard.
That could be a significant amount of time yet. So.
The way things are going, yes, you're absolutely right. Man, so this is AV Rant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You go to www.facebook. Is that what I was going to say? You go to avrant.com and leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRant Podcast, YouTube.com/AVRant for our videos. Contact us directly, Rob at AVRant.com. His Twitter is at FirstReflect. I'm Tom at AVRant.com. My Twitter is at AVRant_Tom. So,
Yep.
Here we are. Yet another week in quarantine. Everybody staying safe, staying inside as much as possible, except for the people who, had bomb shelters already built, and now they're mad that their toilet paper is running out, so they want to go get their hair cut, so they're protesting at the Capitol. But whatever.
It's a pretty darn small number of people, but
thankfully
it is. Once they show the aerial shot, and you're like, yeah, that's really not a large crowd.
I know. They make it look real big when it's like through a window. You see 17 people with their faces pressed up against the window. You're
yes,
like, oh, that's really close.
Or they have the camera angle where it's like shot from someone's chest at an upward angle, and to make everybody look all imposing and stuff. I'm like, all right, I guess that's a form of journalism, but I prefer the aerial shot to show that it really is not most people.
I ran into a friend of mine at the supermarket, I think yesterday or the day before yesterday, and it was the first time I've really run into somebody that's a good enough friend that I would stop and talk to for a while. And he was wearing one of those DIY masks that are made of like a t-shirt or a scarf or something like that. And it was very thick. And I was wearing one that my wife bought from a friend that's, sewn, handmade. It's fine, whatever. It's really whatever. But so we stopped and said hi to each other at the supermarket and near the deli section, where people were ordering sandwiches and stuff. And I swear, first of all, it was the strangest thing because we couldn't hear each other because we're talking through these stupid
It's
masks.
muffled.
And I'm thinking to myself, boy, these Marvel movies make it seem like this is real easy. This is not that easy. Right? So we keep getting closer trying to hear each other, and these people are watching us. Like everybody's around us just watching us slowly get closer trying to hear each other. Like, is that 6 feet? I think it's less than 6. I think they're getting too close. Everybody's watching us talk to each other like somebody is interacting with somebody that they know, like in the wild, not through Zoom or Skype or FaceTime. How is this what life is going to be? I'm like, okay. I basically just said, listen, I gotta go. I gotta go. And I called him from the car. I'm like, that was the most bizarre.
Yeah, actually, that's the best way to talk to each other through the phone. That actually, it just reminded me. I'm like, I missed the Twitter account Muffled Bane. I'm like, how he should come back. If ever there was a time for the Twitter account Muffled Bane, now is the time. It just reminded me of that.
All right, we want to thank our listeners of the week. If you want to support this podcast in some way, one of the ways you can do that financially is going to avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, where you can give us a PayPal donation, or you can go to patreon.com/AVRant Podcast and sign up for our Patreon account, which allows you for a monthly subscription, ongoing support for the podcast, a minimum of $1 a month they'll take from you and give to us, most of it to us. and keep a little bit for themselves. So we want to thank our 112 patrons over at patreon.com. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
For sure. That is patreon.com/AVRant Podcast for anyone who'd like to sign up. It's an automatic monthly donation, a voluntary subscription. You could think of it like that. 112 patrons over there. Thank you so much for the support. And I'll say a small little apology here because going through, I kind of spread out going through filling in the topic list this week. My concentration level is not at where I can just dedicate like 3 solid hours. I'm like, nope, this is going to come in drips and drabs of like half an hour, 45 minutes. So as far as names of people, if they mentioned they were patrons and folks who are continuing to express their gratitude for us doing the podcast, I did a crummy job. I didn't write down names. I just lost track of it, and I apologize for that, but big thank you to everyone who continues to listen and express their gratitude and stick with us on Patreon and all the rest of it. It's hugely appreciated. I'm sorry I didn't have individual names to say.
That's all right. I'm sure just send to us again.
Absolutely.
We won't be offended. We won't be offended.
No. And I hope folks can kind of understand where it's coming from on my end as far as that went. So, yes.
Which is fun. It kind of reminds about repeating yourself. One of the things I found with a lot of people that are friends of mine that that I'm talking to them and we're having the same conversations over and over and over again. It's all about the coronavirus or what's going on in their lives or whatever, but it's the same conversation. It's almost like word for word. I'm like, dude, I've only talked to you once a week for the last month, and every time we've talked, we've had the same conversation. Like, you have told me this exact story 4 weeks in a row. And I realized tonight when I was talking to my wife, as we were walking around having the same damn conversations over and over again, I'm like, this is a form of like soothing therapy that people are going through, where they're just repeating themselves and talking about these same things over and over again, just trying to work through this very difficult time in everybody's lives. And I know this is, a lot of people don't want to hear about it or whatever, and some people really do. I'm going to continue to say that talking about it is the most important thing that you can do. If you're living alone or living with a small group of people and you feel like you're getting overwhelmed by all the emotion and the feelings that are going on during this time, please reach out to somebody. I told my wife that I had this conversation on the podcast last week, and she's like, "Did you tell him to call me?" I'm like, "Yep, I gave him your cell phone number." So yeah, don't call my wife, because that's who I'm talking to. You talk to somebody else. You get your own wife.
Well, actually, I should say a thank you there. I had a couple of people on Twitter and Tom as well offer, if I need to talk to anybody, people are being very kind and reaching out and saying that they're there and willing to talk to me. So that is very much appreciated on my end. I know my brain is definitely working on things in the background that I'm not consciously aware of, because 2 nights in a row, like I normally do have dreams, but not like the dreams I had for a couple of nights in a row, which like they weren't particularly stress dreams. In fact, they were like highly creative dreams where I like dreamt I had like made and written entire movies and stuff. But like, you remember Inception, the whole like this amount of time is passing in a dream, but it's a much shorter amount of time in the real world. I had one where I know, because I woke up and looked at my phone. I'm like, oh, I can go back to sleep for another couple hours. Woke up again. It was only 27 minutes later in real world time, and I had dreamt like a 3-day long dream, and it was to the point where when I woke up I was like, that didn't, like, none of that happened. I was like confused for multiple minutes. I was like, that was so long in dreamland. Right. So yeah, things are definitely firing in the synapses up there.
When we get out at the other end of this, there's going to be a lot of psychologists and therapists that are going to have a lot of work to do.
Yep.
So get ready, guys.
Indeed.
I know you're all hurting right now. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're doing it all over the phone. They don't have to have people there.
Some people, well, there's definitely remote help, and through video chat and all the rest, yeah.
All right, in the news, we've got this from Karl and Damien. Comcast just bought Voodoo from Walmart for an undisclosed amount. The deal is not yet final. Interestingly, the official buyer is a Fandango, which is owned by NBC Universal, which is owned by Comcast. But they apparently intend to continue running both Fandango Now and Voodoo as separate services, at least for some length of time, which may be a week or maybe forever. Who knows?
Hard to tell.
Fandango Now used to be MGO until Comcast bought it and changed it to whatever. It's all going to fold into one and then disappear.
Can't imagine they will continue running Fandango Now and Voodoo as separate services forever, because they do the exact same type of service. So really the question to me is, will Voodoo continue to offer the high bit rates, the full 4K with HDR, with Atmos audio, because they are probably the best service as far as the selection of that goes.
I was so proud of my son. We were looking to rent The Hunger Games because my youngest son just finished it and wanted to watch the movie. And we have the other two movies on Vudu through a friend of mine, and because he shares this account with us, and he was like, well, my middle son found it on Vudu and says, hey, it's got Atmos on Vudu, but it doesn't have it on Amazon.
Yep.
I was like, yeah, but that's linked to somebody else's account, and I'm afraid if I press let's buy it or rent it, it's going to charge them. So we'll just watch it without. It sounded fine. I mean, the upmixing does just fine. But yes, I think I hope that they cherry pick the best of everything and you end up with Atmos no matter what they fold this all into and start calling it.
That would be nice. But, I mean, for the immediate future, they're saying that, you know, the exact same Vudu apps continue to function. Your library doesn't change. Your account doesn't change. Your login doesn't change. For the immediate future, that's the case. And, of course, they'll be communicating with their customers once everything is finalized and they do make any changes. But, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Tough to tell.
Right. So HBO Max has an official launch date of May 27th. It will cost $15 a month up in Canada. If you wanted HBO via streaming, you could add it to a Crave TV subscription. That is now set to expand so that Crave TV's HBO add-on will include almost everything offered by HBO Max. So to remind everybody, HBO Max is not just HBO. It's
definitely not. It's
stuff.
Warner Brothers. It's everything Warner Brothers. So there's a lot of DC Comics content in there too, because Warner Brothers owns
they
that.
They should have called it Animaniacs Max. I would have bought it for $50 a month for Animaniacs Max.
But I mean, the funny thing that people have pointed out is the Harry Potter movies, which are a very well-known Warner Brothers franchise, will not be on HBO Max because they already have a streaming agreement with some other streaming service that goes until like 2025 or something like that. So, yep.
Are they on Amazon Prime? I think they're on Amazon Prime.
I can't remember exactly, but
because I think I have access to that. It might be Hulu, but I thought it was Amazon.
Yeah,
Prime.
Whatever it is, they've got existing streaming agreements in place with another service, so those won't be on HBO Max. But yeah, and then Peacock from NBC, that launches fully in July, so a couple months later. It's in preview right now, but yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. You guys are so late to this game. I'm sorry. My kids asked me the other day, what happened to Blockbuster? Because we were watching Captain Marvel. They're like, what happened to Blockbuster anyways? And I said, Netflix.
Pretty much. I mean, that really was the bulk of it.
Netflix and hubris. Those are the two things that took it down. So some comments from our listeners. Jacob wrote us back during episode 682, which is not as long ago as I seem to think of this. He described a problem we had never encountered before where dialogue would suddenly stop playing out of his center speaker and would start playing out of his surround back speakers instead, which is obviously ghosts. We honestly didn't know what the cause could be, and aside from recommending a full factory reset, neither could Accessories for Less nor Denon couldn't diagnose the problem either. Then the video signal started cutting out. Audio would still be playing, but his image would go black. And the only way to get back was to turn the receiver off and back on again. So that's always the solution. That's how I just fixed Skype.
Pretty much.
So that was enough to push him over the edge to buy a new receiver. He went with a Denon X3500H, and he wanted to mention that he found the website ZK Electronics very helpful, as they let you select two products to compare side by side with their relative strengths and weaknesses clearly listed. So there you go.
Yeah, I checked them out, and they seem pretty accurate. I didn't spot any glaring errors in there, and it is a nice format that they have. So yeah, it could be a very handy shopping tool when you're comparing.
Ken just wanted to remind people that in the U.S. that Netflix still offers Blu-ray discs by mail, and that the turnaround times are very decent since so many people have transitioned over to streaming only. So don't overlook renting physical discs as an option, especially if your internet speeds have been slowed down. And Rob will add that if you want Ultra HD Blu-ray discs by mail, which Netflix doesn't offer, check out rent4k.com. Boy, you know, I keep looking at those red boxes as I'm walking through the supermarket going, nah, I ain't touching it. You know, I know that's ridiculous, but the whole demeanor now is if I don't if I touch it, I buy it policy in the store, you know, and I look at the red box, I'm like, no. That doesn't stop me from buying from Amazon, though. And that doesn't stop me from doing other things. Like I got my youngest son, he's been riding like a BMX bike, and we're all going out, and we've all got 10 speeds, but, we've all got multiple speed bikes, and he's on this little BMX trying to keep up, and he can't do it. It's too small for him. So we bought him a bike, and took it to the bike shop here in town to have them put it together right, because I tried to put it together, and it was clearly not correct. So, and I got no problems with that. Everybody washes their hands and everything, but for some reason, like the anonymousness of that, like even the Amazon boxes come, I wipe down the box, I open up the box, I wipe down everything inside, I wash my hands, I take the packaging off. Like my wife ordered shorts, right? And she's like, she'll wash her hands, put the shorts on, make sure they fit, take them off, I throw them in the wash. And then she goes and takes a shower. I mean, it's overkill. I know it's overkill. No, but it's better than the
until we have something, at least a treatment. Then you gotta do that way. I will just say I wish there were still a way to rent discs by mail outside of the United States, but both Netflix discs by mail and rent4k.com are U.S. only. So that's how that works.
All right, into the questions here. Tom, not me, a different Tom. Tom has one last question regarding the topic of using bookshelf speakers in a large volume of air and their subsequent bass output just above where they cross over into the subwoofer. So if you remember, this question was that, he's got a big volume of air and he sits at a reasonable distance, but he's worried that the bass is going to, the lower part of that where they cross into the subwoofer is going to not be loud enough. And
that the bookshelf speakers are going to struggle in that sort of like 80 to 160 hertz range.
So in his case, in order to get the smoothest, most seamless transition between his Ascend bookshelf speakers and his subwoofers in his room, he actually wound up applying some EQ to the low end. It's just above 80 hertz and downward of his bookshelf speakers so that they would roll off even faster. Basically, a steeper low end slope on his speakers made them blend more seamlessly with his subs. So since he actually turned the signal down for the low end of his speakers, does that indicate they now have even more available headroom in that crossover region if he turns up the master volume? Well, I mean, yeah, but that's not only the limiting. I mean, I know you're worried about this one little section, but where's the master volume now? I guess is the question. If you have to keep it at reference volume to hear it at a reasonable volume, if you have to keep it up at 0 on your dial to hear it, then it doesn't have any headroom. There's no headroom there, even though you've decided that you want it to cross over. But I mean, if it's negative 30, like where mine usually sits, then it's got tons of headroom. But it's got more to do with other parts of the speaker that you would be worried about starting to strain before I would worry about this part.
Well,
straining.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like EQing any part of the frequency range, if you have turned down the signal, so when you're applying EQ, you're electrically altering the signal that's being sent to the amplifiers. So if you're turning that down anywhere in the frequency range, then in that area where the equalization has turned the signal down, the speaker itself had a certain amount of power that it could handle at those frequency ranges, and now that you've reduced how much is going in on a regular basis, which means, yes, you have increased headroom in that region anytime you're turning it down. Right. Whereas, if you said, in order to get my bookshelf speakers to blend nicely with my subwoofers in my large room, I had to EQ the bottom end upward, well, then you've reduced the headroom that is now available. So that is certainly the case. But the thing is, where we're mostly concerned is not the area below 80 hertz that the bookshelf speakers are producing. It's the area above 80 hertz, the octave, maybe octave and a half above 80 hertz. And it sounded like from what he described that it was only slightly above, maybe at 100 or 110 or something like that. He started this EQ roll-off. So it's still in that range up to 160, 200 hertz where you haven't applied any EQ to the bookshelf speakers. I mean, they have their normal amount of headroom that they always had all along. You didn't change anything there.
Right.
But I mean, it certainly sounds like...
So that's what I was saying. I mean, like...
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. It sounds like he doesn't have an issue. As far as what's going on in his room, he's not having to boost heavily, say 200 hertz on down in order to get it to blend and sound okay in his room.
Well, yeah, and like I said, I mean, what Rob's saying is correct. If you EQ something down, then you created more headroom. I mean, in essence. But if you EQ'd it down, but you are, in order to feel like you're hearing it at a reasonable, I'm not talking about loud, I'm just talking about like reasonable volume, you are almost at reference level on your dial. You never had much headroom to begin with, so you may have given it a little bit more, but it doesn't make any difference. You're not going to be able to turn it much louder anyways, because as soon as you do, you're going to start worrying about other parts of that signal clipping. You know, you may have created a little bit more headroom right there, but, you know, the minute that you start getting up to reference volume and above, maybe your tweeter is going to start to distort on you, or the crossover from the mid-range into the tweeter is going to become more problematic. So, you know, we would need to know where that volume dial is. I'm assuming it's at a reasonable level, in which case you have created more headroom, yes, but you always had some headroom anyways, so you were fine. So regarding surge protection, the whole system needs to be surge protected, right? Yes. It's not good to have, say, your AV receiver plugged into a surge protector, but then have some other piece of equipment that is plugged into the receiver via HDMI or RCA cables that is not surge protected, correct? Yes. But do all pieces of equipment have to be plugged into the same surge protector? If so, how does that work with subwoofers that are placed at opposite ends of the room? Okay, so this is all what he said is all true, except for the question really is, does it have to be the same surge protector? And the answer is really no. I mean, whatever the weakest link is the one. If something lets something through, right, and you have no idea where it's going to go. Electricity is funny. You know, it could go through 3 devices and then blow up the 4th one. You know what I mean? It's happened before. But you know, what normally happens is people don't think about things like the cable that comes in for their cable boxes, and they don't think about like the Ethernet cable that comes in to their system. You know, if you don't surge protect all of that, then you might as well not surge protect any of it, he says, knowing that that's not really true. But you know, you're still leaving a hole in the boat, so to speak. It may be a high hole or it may be a low hole, but it's a hole that can allow water to come into your boat of you know, your AV receiver or your AV system. But yes, you have to surge protect it all. Now, subwoofers, on the other hand, do have fuses. So the idea there is that you should be able to plug them into a wall, not surge protect them, because if they get a surge, the fuse blows and that stops that. It doesn't pass the subwoofer at that point. It may kill the fuses in the amp, but it shouldn't go past it. Which is why the AV receiver the subwoofer manufacturers say you could plug us directly into a wall. Everything else except for some amps, they're going to tell you should surge protect it.
But yeah, if you simplify down to just 2 devices, you have a receiver at one end of the room and a subwoofer at the other end of the room, and the only thing connecting the subwoofer and the receiver to each other is one RCA cable, then if the AV receiver is on a surge protector at that end of the room and the subwoofer's on a different surge protector, but it is on a surge protector at the opposite end of the room, then the system is surge protected. If the surge comes in through either outlet, it will have to get past the surge protector on either end before it gets into the device. If it does get through there, then it can go right through that RCA cable to the other device. But the idea is that it has to go through the surge protector first. They don't have to be plugged into the exact same surge protecting unit. Where some of that comes up is if you're getting ground loop hums, which essentially means your outlets were not really properly wired. The grounding wire was not properly run back to the panel. All grounding wires throughout your entire residence should all share the exact same grounding screw back at your electrical panel. That is correct wiring, but some people get lazy and they leave that ground wire hanging, or they just connect it to a pipe that's nearby or something like that, and that can end up leading to ground loops. So that's more where plugging into different outlets comes into play. But for surge protection, if the devices are separately surge protected, they're still surge protected.
Gurinder. As we discussed last week, the left side of Gurinder's theater is open to another section of his basement. Visually, he closes off with a curtain, but there's no physical wall there. So does it make sense to only put absorption panels on his right? Or should he also put freestanding panels to the left to match? And if this is the case, the thicker the better, specifically for the sidewall treatments next to his front, left, and right speakers. Okay, so first of all, he's got a big stack of pillows on the left. Anyway,
he does.
So I feel like you kind of already got some absorption going on over there, Haas. But so honestly, what you're really trying, the problem here is that on your left, you've got blank air. So your first reflection point from there is like in the other room someplace and maybe doesn't even bounce back to your ear at all.
I mean, it
You know,
does
at least not
eventually, but
directly.
it'll certainly
You know,
be weaker and later than the one from your right side wall, for sure.
Right. So what, you know, if you're thinking about that front, left, and right, you know, that first reflection point, the problem you have is on your left, your right, you have a definite first reflection point that will reflect sound directly to your ear, and the left does not have that. In essence, it doesn't have it at all. So what you need to do to kind of balance it out is put as much as you can on the right to try to basically mimic the nothingness that's on the left, to try to absorb all of that.
And to directly answer, you don't really need freestanding panels on the left. It's not going to do anything effectively different than just the open cavity of air that's already there.
Yeah. Now, if you wanted to put some more panels on the walls in that other room, that's great. That's fine. But yeah, specifically putting that one there to catch that first reflection point is not, well, it's not possible. I mean, it doesn't exist.
It's not needed on the left.
Okay. The curtains all around his front and side walls are blackout curtains. Air cannot easily move through them. So do acoustic panels need to be in front of his curtains? Would having his blackout curtains on top of the absorption panels be severely detrimental? So this is an interesting question, because the answer is really they shouldn't. In order for the panels to perform optimally, you should not have anything in front of them that is going to block the sound in any way. They should be acoustically transparent that goes through there. Now, depending on what your panels are really doing, you know, that first reflection point, for sure, you don't want to have a blackout curtain on top of that one.
Yeah, it's a little bit frequency dependent, because if it's bass
the lower
trapping,
frequencies aren't going to care.
Yeah,
right.
Bass trapping is going to go right around your curtains, and it's going to act as though the curtains aren't there whatsoever. So covering up your bass traps with curtains in front of them, I wouldn't have a second thought about that. But when it's specifically for a first reflection point on your sidewall, there we're trying to catch mid-range and higher frequencies. And having that curtain there is basically like whatever the curtain was doing, you put the panel behind it, and the high frequencies are like, well, I'm still just acting like it's the curtain. I don't even really know there's a panel there. So for that specific
which may
spot,
end up being almost diffusion in that case. It may, because the ripples in the curtains are going to act sort of like a diffuser, but they will not allow the high end sounds, the high frequency sounds, to pass through and be absorbed.
Correct.
Whereas the bass will go around.
Yeah.
And most of the mid range as well, I would think, would go around, and the panel would still be effective there. But what you really want at that first reflection point is to basically grab that treble, and you're going to lose that if you put it something. But the rest of it, I wouldn't really worry about too much. I mean, because I'm looking at his side walls, and like his right side wall in particular, it is just a wall, and he's got some panels hanging on, and it looks like he's got blackout curtains because his walls are like a light tan color. So I think what he's going for here is just, you know, darkening the entire area,
definitely.
so it's more of a black box, which is great. But you don't need blackout curtains to black out a wall.
Well, he needed it for his front wall because there's the window back there, there's the sliding glass door back there, so he needed it there, and I think he just well, if that's what he's using there, he'll use them all the way around, basically.
Right. Yeah. So for the rest of those, like the rest of the area that's not that door or any windows that we may not be able to see, you can just use acoustically transparent black cloth.
That's
which
true.
Should black it out enough when the lights are off.
Yeah.
That, you know, you should get that black box effect, and it would allow the panels to work effectively without you having to put all of the panels in front of them and everything.
Yeah, the curtain on the right side doesn't need to be light opaque. There's not a light source behind it anyway, so yeah, good call.
Not unless there's one right behind that speaker that we can't see,
right.
But I don't think there is.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Rob mentioned in the SM pads, whatever, last week as an inexpensive alternative to Auralex Mopads for decoupling speakers, but Amazon Canada doesn't seem to have them, and Amazon.com won't ship them to Canada. Any suggestions for Canucks? Rob, what you got?
Indeed, yeah. So once again, just some third party that's doing the exact same design as the Auralex Mopads, but now for $30 Canadian for a pair. It's actually 8 pieces of foam that you'll get, because there are 2 wedge-shaped pieces for each speaker, and then 2 little teeny tiny little wedges so that you can make them flat or make it a 4-degree incline or decline or an 8-degree incline or decline. You have all of those options. Only $30 for the pair. They're called Lyx Pro, Lyx Pro. That's the name to look up on Amazon Canada. They're the exact same thing as the SM Pads or the Auralex Mopads, just a different brand name. And the Auralex Mopads on Amazon Canada go either for 70 or 90 depending on the exact model, so a big cost savings there.
There you go. Or, a bunch of mouse pads. He's got his 15-inch deep shelf on his back wall and his surround back speakers on that shelf. His surround backs are the wedge-shaped bipole kind, so the surface of the shelf is below the drivers. So the surface of the shelf is below the drivers that are firing somewhat sideways from the angled faces of his speakers. Is that negatively affecting their performance? Yeah.
A little bit.
I mean, that's really kind of the nicest way to say it is.
They're recessed back, and it's like having a bookshelf speaker that's pushed back so that it is not proud of the front face of the shelf that it's sitting on.
But you can't take this speaker almost certainly. I mean, there's almost probably no depth behind this angled side.
Mm-hmm.
It would be nigh impossible. You'd have to actually mount a bracket to the shelf and have these on a bracket that would have the whole speaker stand proud of the thing, and that's just not. Just look ridiculous.
Honestly, for the surround backs, we're mostly caring about, can the tweeter have a clear line of sight to the listeners? And if you're seeing the farther away image, they certainly still can. So some EQ is probably being applied if things are going on there with any sort of boundary bounce off of that shelf surface for the mid-range driver and that. But is it massively negatively affecting their performance? No. Is it affecting it to some degree? Yes.
Surround back speakers.
I know.
Technically, I think objectively it is negatively affecting the performance. I think that's just the case. But I think subjectively, whatever.
It's never even come up for him until now. It's just he's just oh, wait, there's a thing that might not be perfection.
Yeah. They're right.
I would not be overly concerned about that, Gurinder.
100%. I would. Yeah. So here's a drop tile ceiling. Above it is a single layer of 3.5 inch thick insulation in the ceiling joist. Would there be any benefit to adding more insulation up there? What are the drop tiles made of, I guess would be the question. Because if you could put more insulation up there, that can't hurt.
Joist bays are going to be at least 8 inches deep. They should be 10 or 12, sometimes even 14 or 16 inches deep. If we go back to that image of the back of his room, those look like... It's tough to tell exactly what type of ceiling tiles those are. Can't really see any depth to them, but... more insulation. More insulation wouldn't hurt, but would it help? It's really tough to say, because it's insulation with an air gap, but normally above your ceiling joists you do put 6 to 8 inches of insulation. That's sort of typical.
Right.
It doesn't have to be expensive. Get the cheapest darn insulation that doesn't have to be rock wool at all. It can be the pink stuff, it can be the white stuff that they put above garages. It all works the same. A little bit more. It doesn't have to fill the whole joist bay, and some air gap is still what you normally want. But we usually do go for 6 to 8 inches. That's typical.
So he uses an acoustically transparent Elunevision screen. There's a window behind it, and he covers the window with blackout drapes. But if he pulls open the drapes, he can see right through his screen with the light coming through the window. He's just curious, do non-acoustically transparent screens let any light through? He assumes it would be far less, but are they completely opaque? Yes. Mine is. I can tell you that much, because I have mine in front of a window, but I had the same thought you did until I basically mounted it and went, turn the lights off, let's see what we could see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly ones that are dual layer with a full black vinyl backing in addition to the white front vinyl of the screen. Those are pretty, if they're not completely opaque, they're very close to completely opaque.
I've never seen any light come through mine, and I just have a silver ticket.
Definitely nothing like this. I mean, this is kind of interesting. This is what happens if you put a light source right behind your acoustically transparent screen, and this is a woven screen with a tight weave. But this shows you shows you why it's acoustically transparent. It's got holes.
You think sound come through? You think it's going to stop light?
That's right. Yes, wavelengths of light are a little bit shorter than wavelengths of sound. That would definitely be the case.
A little bit. All right, Karl. Karl has a MacBook Pro. Looks like a 13-incher. And he wants to plug in 2 monitors. The MacBook has 2 USB-C ports, and he already owns a Belkin dock that plugs into one of those USB-C ports. And the Belkin dock has a single DisplayPort output on it. So what does he need in order to connect a second monitor? Should he get a DisplayPort splitter, or should he get something like the Monoprice Thunderbolt 3 dual DisplayPort dock to plug in the second USB-C port on his MacBook? I kind of thought you could just daisy chain monitors. Can't you just go from one monitor to the other and then the computer just knows somehow magically?
I haven't seen that with like
I don't know.
DisplayPort out from monitor to monitor. So I mean, first of all, that Apple MacBook, both of its USB-C ports are Thunderbolt ports, which means you should actually be able to just plug a Thunderbolt to DisplayPort adapter cable directly into your second port on your MacBook, no dock needed, and connect a second display that way. You wouldn't want to use a splitter, because a splitter would just mean you have 2 mirrored monitors, and I don't imagine that's what he wants. I imagine he wants to extend his desktop so that he has more space, not just 2 identical monitors. That seems a little bit weird. So it's not a splitter that you want. The Monoprice dual DisplayPort dock that you mentioned, that would totally do the job if you need some other ports that are available on there. I don't know if it has all the ports necessary that you could replace your Belkin dock, or if the Belkin dock has some kind of ports that you absolutely need and wouldn't be replaced by this Monoprice dock. But if all you need is a second monitor connected, you don't even need a second dock. You should be able to just connect directly to that second Thunderbolt port on your MacBook. Thunderbolt to DisplayPort cable is all you need.
I don't have any information. It just says MacBook Pro.
Yeah, he didn't say what exact model.
It could be 100 years old, in which case, who knows?
But he did show the he did show the ports, and both of them had the little Thunderbolt symbol over the USB-C ports.
Oh, well, that should be fine.
Yeah.
All right. Steven on Twitter. Steven downloaded the Dolby Atmos test tone MKV files that Rob uploaded and shared. Steven has a 5.1.4 configuration, so he was curious to hear how it would handle the 7.1.4 and then 9.1.6 test tones. From what he could tell, the surround back test tones got played strictly out of his surround speakers. Makes sense. Mm-hmm. But his side surround test tones got played as a mixture from the front and surround speakers, which made those sounds less discrete and sort of blur together. Is that intentional? Side surrounds. So the regular surrounds got played out of the fronts as well?
Yes. And this is an interesting...
That doesn't sound right.
This is an interesting thing. The reason this happens with these particular test tones, so these were taken off of Dolby's Atmos demo discs, which weren't even like for retail sale. You could get them at trade shows and stuff like that. But I just used Make MKV and got the MKV files off there and shared them with a link. I guess I'll post that again since we're mentioning it, so people don't have to go searching for it. But yeah, what's going on here is these test tones are objects only. There are no channel-based sounds whatsoever in these test tones, and that's why this is happening. And it's actually a really interesting thing as you go through this, because if you try configuring different configurations of speakers, 7.1.4, 5.1.2, 9.1.6, and anywhere in between, 7.2.2, whatever it is, it's interesting to hear how the test tones do get mapped to the available signals when it's objects only. So what this is saying is Dolby in a 5.1.4 configuration, like what Steven has, would have you place the surround speakers. You only have one pair in a 5.1.4. Mm-hmm. They would have you position those some ways behind you. They would have them at a 120-degree azimuth to the left and right from straight ahead center.
Oh, right,
so some distance behind you. So it makes complete sense that the surround back test tones in a 7.1.4 test tone thing would only come out of the surround speakers because they're like, that's as far back as we can put sounds in your system, so that's the speakers we're going to play them out of. But the side surrounds, if it were channel based, they would come strictly out of your surround speakers. But in object-based, it goes, well, we're expecting that your surround speakers are some distance behind you. So to try and make it sound like the sound is directly 90 degrees to your side, we're going to play a little bit of that sound out of your front speaker as well. And this reveals how our ability to stereo image does not work beside us, and it does not work above us. It will reveal that to you. It's exactly what you said, Stephen. So it's absolutely intentional because it's objects only, and it's very revealing of how things are steered around. I mean, the fun one is like if you have top middles and front heights, but then you play the 9.1.6 or any of the 0.4 ones where it's expecting you to have top rears, well, then it puts some sound into the top middles and some sound into your surround backs if you have them, because it's trying to
which makes sense.
Move that sound above and behind you. So you get to see how that all works. And it's kind of fun. If you have a full setup, I mean, just go through your AV receivers amplifier configuration, your speaker configuration, and try changing that up to fewer speakers to see how that renderer starts mapping things down.
All right. DK. So DK heard us both list all the equipment we use, and neither of us uses an external audio DAC, correct? He couldn't
That is
be
correct.
more correct. Literally couldn't be more correct. That never has an external audio DAC graced my home theater, and as long as I live, I can never imagine a scenario in which an external audio DAC would make its way in here.
I mean,
and not be shooed away.
I do own a portable player from FiO, which technically
I
could.
have external DACs.
Yeah, it
I
could
have external DACs. But those are connected to my computer.
Yes.
For really reasons of amplification and not for anything having to do with the DAC. The DAC happened to come along with the amps. But whatevs. So he's been watching several YouTube videos about external audio DACs lately. Some of them are about products costing 4 figures or more. And their claims about how much they improve the sound quality remind him a lot of some of the claims that are made about super expensive cables. He doesn't buy into all that.
Good.
Continue along those thought lines, my good friend, because that is definitely where you want to be. But some of the videos get quite technical, and they use words like quantum. I put that part in there. They say quantum and X quantum. Next, whatever. And they talk about bit depths, sampling rates, clock accuracy, and in particular jitter. Not jitter. Please, can someone save us from the jitter? They can be quite convincing. But Dave has followed AVRant since the Dina days, and he doesn't recall us ever recommending that someone buy an external audio DAC to improve the sound of their system. No. So what is our stance? Is jitter really a thing? Technically, yes. Jitter is actually an actual thing that exists in the real world, can be made. You can reproduce it.
Yup.
It exists.
Yup.
It is a thing.
It can be measured. It can be objectively shown to exist. To explain what
I have heard it.
There's something that is outputting an audio signal, and it's doing so at a certain rate. So there's a clock attached to that. It's saying, here is the rate at which I am outputting this signal. Then there is a device that is receiving that signal, and it too has a clock. And that clock has to say, well, I know exactly when to look for each pulse in this signal because our two clocks are supposed to be running at the same speed. Well,
right.
We all know it's possible for two clocks to have slightly different... They're supposed to be the same, but they're not exactly the same. And when that happens, you get this thing called jitter in a digital signal where the sending device and the receiving device are not perfectly in sync with their clocks.
Right.
And they should be. Now, there's all kinds of ways to get around that. We had things where we had a separate cable going between the two devices, which was just to sync the clocks. Now we have asynchronous clocks where it doesn't matter because the things are set as packetized things down a USB cable or something like that, and you don't have to have the clock synchronized, or you have single clock where it's only coming from one side. And mostly we now just have clock speeds that are so extraordinarily faster than the audio signal coming in that it really doesn't matter if they're synchronized. But in the early days of digital audio, where the clocks could barely keep up, there was legitimately jitter between devices when the clocks weren't perfectly synced. So it can exist. It's really not something you have to worry about these days. I'll let you talk about DACs because I've got more to say on it too after.
So back in the day when we were first getting like really high end SACD players and DVDAs and stuff like that, we were talking about, getting higher fidelity pieces of equipment and that sort of thing. Jitter was a thing. I mean, and it wasn't something that I ever experienced in my own system, but I would go to trade shows and they would reproduce it. They're like, okay, they take two devices, they hook them together, and they do some funky stuff to make them go out of, the clocks out of sync, and you go, oh yeah, man, that's awful.
Yes.
I mean, but it's also completely unmistakable. It's not like, ooh, I think it might have some jitter in there.
It's not lifting a veil. No.
Yeah. Oh my. Ooh, I think that boy has some jitter on his face. Somebody should wipe it off. No. It's like, like when I'm talking, when you're online. I mean, since we're all talking online these days, and like the signal gets all weird, and all of a sudden we're going, and they get, their voice starts to stutter, garble, and come back, and then it comes back.
Yeah.
Jitter.
Yeah.
Okay. That is jitter. Do you think you would recognize
that? Isn't actually jitter, but it's type
what
of.
It sounds like.
It's that type of very obvious. You would not mistake it. It's not a subtle error.
Right. It's completely unsubtle. Right. So, when the people are like, I'm going to pay 4 figures to get an external DAC to make sure I don't get the jitters.
Right. Well, I mean, again, to be clear, these days with such extraordinarily high clock speeds, like there is actually jitter. Like you can measure it. You can display that there is jitter going on. It's just, it doesn't matter because everything is being oversampled to such a rate that it's completely inconsequential to the final sound. You can error correct it all day long. You've got oodles and oodles of data to do that.
Right.
Yeah. What's most important here, DK, is that when we're talking about an external DAC as a device that you can purchase, it is not just a DAC. So DAC, DAC, stands for digital to audio converter, digital to analog converter, sorry. That is not the only function that a device that you purchase that says this is an external DAC is performing. An external DAC that you would, say, connect to your stereo audio system, right? So you might have a preamplifier, a digital preamplifier, or connect it directly to a CD player to an external DAC, which then feeds an amplifier, something like that. Well, that device is not just a digital to analog converter. It is also a preamplifier. It is also in some way attenuating or amplifying the signal before it gets sent to the regular amplifier. If we're talking about a DAC that you connect to headphones, well, that is also an amplifier. It's a headphone amplifier in addition to being a digital to audio converter. Some of them are also decoders. They might have Dolby Digital, or they might be converters that can take DSD audio and convert it to PCM. So it's really rare to find an external device that's sold as an external DAC that only does digital to analog conversion and nothing else. And that's why, in essence, you could have a case where, especially like on your computer, you connect one of these external DAC devices to a USB port and you connect your headphones to that, and you are not mistaken when you go, this actually legitimately sounds different than the headphone jack that's built into my computer. That can be a real difference. Now, was it the digital to analog conversion that made that difference in sound, or was it the amplification, the preamplification, sometimes equalization that's applied, sometimes format conversion that's applied? Was it any of those things? And the answer is always yes. It was something other than just the digital analog
almost
conversion.
Always point towards the amplification.
Yes.
It's almost always the amplification. And the reason I said that I do have DACs in my house and they are connected to my computer is for that exact reason. When I plug in my headphones directly into the headphone amp or headphone jack of my computer or my laptop or whatever, there's a certain level of noise that are there, especially with my higher fidelity headphones. Some of them cannot drive the headphones as well as they need to be driven. And therein is why I have an external headphone amp, which also contains a DAC.
Yes, because
I do not care that, believe me, I did not get it for the DAC. The DAC is not why that thing sits in my house.
But why it makes sense in that case is because to get the cleanest signal out of the computer, it makes sense to send out the digital signal out of the computer. Because if you sent the analog signal out of the computer, well, then it's already gone through something that's probably noisy inside the computer, the analog preamplifier stage or the analog amplifier stage if you're sending it out the headphone jack. And then you're just further amplifying that, but it already had noise in it. So it makes sense just send it out of the the computer digitally. Therefore, you need a digital to analog converter. I mean, that is necessary if what's coming out of the computer is a digital signal. But then what made the difference in sound was not the DAC inside your computer versus the external DAC. It was the amplifier that was on the other end of that DAC. That's what made the audible difference. So when it comes to like a surround sound system or a dedicated 2-channel audiophile system, a lot of that just comes from the continuing notion that one device can't possibly do more than one thing adequately, which is complete bunk. Your AV receiver has DACs in it. There's no question about that. It converts digital audio to analog audio at some point inside your AV receiver. It also does it every bit as well as any external DAC could possibly do it. But could you still hear a difference in sound connecting an external quote-unquote DAC device? Possibly, because a lot of them are applying EQ without you knowing about it, or converting the format. You might not even know about that, or the amplifier or preamplifier stage is different, and there could be real differences in sound there. So just be aware of what it is that's actually making the difference in sound. But by and large, for an audio system, you do not need external DACs.
I've been saying this for over 10 years, and it's still true. DACs are a mature technology.
Yeah, the actual digital analog conversion definitely
is not hard. This is like they cut this down a long time ago. It's everything else. So yes, you can, somebody can sit there with you and switch out cables and tell you that they're hearing differences, and if you sit there long enough, you may in fact hear some differences, and you may in fact prefer those things. But just know that whatever that DAC is doing can absolutely be done by your receiver. If there's a problem with the amplification within your receiver, the amps can be upgraded by getting an external amp. And if it's an EQ that they're applying that you don't know about, you can do that with your receiver as well. Yep. Almost certainly, especially if you have the Odyssey editor app. So there's no situation that I can envision where I think a freestanding DAC within my home theater is something that I would have. I just don't see it. Going on. Dean got a Pioneer receiver back in 2014. As far as power features and sound quality go, it's totally fine, but he hates the user interface. Nobody else in his family can make the sense of how to adjust anything, and Dean, why are they adjusting stuff other than volume? And Dean has to refer to the manual when he wants to change or adjust some things. And the remote's buttons are small, plentiful, and poorly labeled. So for $500, can we suggest a receiver model that is not only competent, but also has a much nicer interface, remote, and menu system? All he needs is 7.2 with no plans to expand beyond that. All right, so it is very easy for us to recommend a receiver for you, and receiver interfaces, God help us all, have gotten better.
Some of them.
They're not great.
There are still some out there where I'm like, that's an engineer can make sense of that. Regular consumer, I wouldn't expect it.
I like it when they staple the different parts of the manual together. The parts they're like, oh, this is the part about the video, this is the part about the audio, this is the part about the inputs, and they throw it up in the air, and however they land, that's how they staple the whole thing together. That's my favorite user manual right there. But I am a one who would like to always err on the side of saving money. So if you're happy with your receiver as is, and your problem is the interface and everything else, then I am going to suggest, before you buy a new receiver, because this would actually hold, would continue on past, is getting something like a nice Harmony remote, where you could program, I don't know exactly what it is that what things they are adjusting. I don't know what they would be adjusting other than changing inputs, changing volume, changing channels.
Maybe they want to
sort of
turn the subwoofer up and down late at night type of thing. Maybe they want to change the center channel up and down.
All those things can have a button associated with it, with one of the touchscreen Harmony remotes. Now, for the same amount of money, just about, you can get yourself a new receiver that will do 7.2.
Oh yeah,
almost. But
with some upgraded features in addition, honestly.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I can't guarantee the new remote you're going to get or the user interface is going to be that much more penetrable by your family. It may be a lot easier for you.
Yeah.
But they may still look at it and go I still have no freaking clue how to take care of this thing. So it may be the best solution is a user device that is easier for your family to use. But you would have to tell us what all these adjustments they're making are.
Right.
I don't know. Like for me, my family literally only presses 3 buttons. I mean, not including the volume. It is just, turn on the Xbox, which I have labeled as Xbox. Turn on the Blu-ray, the Ultra HD Blu-ray player, which I have labeled as watch a movie. And then the other one is PS3, which no one uses for anything anymore.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and they change the volume, and that's it.
Although there would be some work for Dean in setting that up so that things are clear, and that if he has to program sequences potentially to do some things, then there would be set up on that side. But yeah, you're right. It could, if the interface is the issue, then there could be ways to get around that by getting a nice universal remote.
If you're using this for as an excuse to get a new receiver,
there's that.
I'm 100% behind that as an idea, but I just want to let you know if the device interface that there is really their issue, then you're unlikely to grab a Denon remote and go, oh my god, this is so much more
right,
so much easier to manage.
Yes,
that usually ain't.
And giving it away there, we would be pointing you to Denon's X3500H. At the moment, Accessories for Less is sold out of their stock. They'll get some more, but Amazon actually just has them. I think they're $550 at Amazon, but that's pretty darn close. Yeah, $550 over at Amazon right now. So if you need it right away, you can get it for $50 more than the budget you said. Now, I mean, is it the easiest thing ever to use a Denon X3500H? I mean, I can't exactly say that, but what I really, really like about what Denon and Marantz have done in recent years is when you're first setting it up, the wizard that they have you go through, the initial setup wizard, is actually complete and good and walks you through step by step in a very understandable way and gets you to confirm with every speaker that you connect that things have been connected properly. It's really well done. I actually very much like that wizard, and other brands don't have that. Then their menu layout structure, I mean, it's not the greatest thing ever, but I mean, it's pretty logical. It's a list of items. You go in and click OK. It's not super confusing. And the remote is reasonable. I mean, again, there's a lot of buttons on there because every input has its own button, and it has the ability to potentially control other devices if you wanted to with the, you input the code of what that other device does. So There's still a lot of buttons, but it's backlit. It's reasonably well labeled. I don't find it confusing.
I feel like what's probably going on here is they're having to switch inputs, and that sort of stuff to go from one thing to another. And, I have no idea what's going on with this brand. So that's why I feel like the Harmony having its
very possibly,
could be the solution here. But you let us know what you end up doing. You could also do both.
You could.
You could just say that. Say the
not for $500 though.
Not for $500, but the remote came with the new receiver, and it's a totally different box by a totally different company. But yes, it was packaged together. Ian is planning on getting an acoustically transparent SeymourAV projection screen. Naturally, with his front speakers behind the screen, that will mean he has some distance between the screen and his physical front wall. So how much light will pass through the screen and end up being visible as it illuminates that physical front wall?
Well, we saw what happens if you have a full-on window behind your screen there.
Yeah.
There's an image of what Gurinder's is. But we're talking about the projector hits the front of the screen. Some light does go through the acoustically transparent screen. It does hit the wall that's behind the acoustically transparent screen. If that is a white, glossy wall, then, some of the light will come on back through. And it will actually wash out your image a little bit. Now, Seymour does give you the option of getting a second layer to the screen. It's a black backing layer, also acoustically transparent, so it's by no means opaque, but it does help to block a little bit extra light. But I would say with an acoustically transparent screen, it's a nice thing to at least paint the wall that's behind the screen matte. If you can paint it matte black, great, because that's not going to reflect any light back. Or if you can hang a nice, dark black curtain back there, great. That's not going to reflect light back. Yeah, that's probably easier.
Well, I mean, that would be the easiest thing to do. Is just take a curtain across the entire front wall, acoustically transparent, curtain, across that entire area maybe, and that would be the easiest solution for this. Yeah, I mean, if you got a gloss, or even not gloss, but just a white wall back there, or a light gray or something like that, this could be an issue.
Yep.
For sure. It will wash out. It will wash out. Will it destroy your image? No.
No. And it isn't the same as actually having an outright light behind your screen. It's not to that extent, but the screen does have holes in it, and some light will bounce back and come back through.
So he just wanted to share that he took our recommendations about screen size, that there can be such a thing as too big, under advisement. But he still envisioned having a truly huge screen that could deliver an IMAX-like 60-degree field of view for his front row, 10 feet from the screen, and retain a greater than 40-degree field of view for his second row, 15 feet from the screen. So he got a hold of a temporary 150-inch screen to try it out, with plans for the SeymourAV screen to be 160 inches if he liked how the 150 looked. He loves it. I'm so glad you tried it, because I would not have. I would not have tried it, but if I had, I wouldn't have loved it. So I'm glad that you did, and I'm glad that you loved it. And his Epson 6050 UB seems to be able to handle the large size just fine, so long as he doesn't put the wide color filter into the light path. He did run into some issues since he had to physically move his projector and run a new HDMI cable. He accidentally sliced the outer jacket of that HDMI cable while cutting a zip tie, but thankfully it still works. And he discovered that even with the Epson's large lens shift range, it has its limits, and the motorized lens memory is not as precise as he would like. It needs a few manual clicks after each change to get it just right. Maybe that's what the other guy's problem was too. I don't know. He'll be making his own velvet housing that will allow him to mask the screen, although he's quite happy with the Epson's black level performance and how black bars are not as objectionable to him as he had feared. So that's good. He made a test pattern on YouTube of various aspect ratios if anyone wants to test out their own display and potential masking solutions. That's great. We should put that onto our page. That's great. That's great. Yes, YouTube. It's got a really nice theater. It's got like a bajillion lights overhead and a wood ceiling. Is it wood?
Yeah. So I mean, it certainly looks like exposed rafters type of.
Yeah, but I think it's wood underneath too. I mean, it's all planks. It's really nice. I like it.
Yeah, it's sort of like a pseudo Starfield, just with
there's
little.
Really not a question here, though, is there?
Is there not that part? I mean, that was all update there, just to let us know what the situation going on is. But yeah, I mean, he was basically in the email. It was going through all of these updates and that. And just making sure that we sort of agree with his plan overall. And I mean, the main thing is you tried it. I mean,
I'm not gonna argue with you.
You have the projector there now. And so, you have the ability actually to just overshoot now and make sure that 160 is really, really what you want. Wanted to confirm that the light output is going to be okay. And like you say, as long as you keep the wide color filter out of the pack, because that does reduce the light by, it's about 35 to 40%. It's significant decrease in light. So, HDR is not going to look significantly different from SDR. They're going to be about the same number of nits, whether you're watching SDR or HDR. So don't expect to see a big difference there. But there's when you want to go to this type of size. You're definitely
pushing this projector to its limits at this size, for sure.
But at the same time, I mean, what else is going to give you this type of size at this type of price? So the value is absolutely there. It looks as though he actually does make use of his second row. That's where he actually took the pictures from. The angle that we're seeing it is from his second row, and it does look really nice. I would like that type of viewing angle. I would probably sit in your second row, not in your front row. I would find your front row too large. So, yeah, I think you're in pretty good shape there. And the idea of making your own sort of velvet masking, I mean, yeah, you're going to be getting up and down to change that as you please, but certainly that makes more sense cost-wise than going for four-way motorized masking or something.
Right, and you can see, too, how, I mean, I hate to call it a budget projector, but what he's trying to do, it is sort of a budget projector to have the motorized lens shift be dead on every time.
Right.
That just costs a lot of money to get that technology to work that every single time. So you're going to have to live with a little bit of, it's not quite right. Let me click it over once or twice. That's great. It looks like he's got a fantastic theater. Enjoy your quarantine. Anthony on Twitter. Anthony got a Denon X3600H, and he's a bit confused by the amp assign setting. He's running a 5.2.2 configuration of speakers, and none of the amp assign options are exactly that. Furthermore, he got a 5-channel Emotiva A500 amp, and he doesn't know how to tell the Denon that he's using an external amp instead of the built-in amps for most of his speakers. Can we help him sort that out? Yeah, so I've got it's just yeah. I've done it once when I did mine, right? So I seem to remember that going into, like, when you plug in the Odyssey mic, it'll give you like your speaker, it'll go through and like see what speakers you have, and then it'll ask you questions about stuff. But I thought you could just plug everything in, go into speakers, and then tell it that you've got an amp assigned. There's like an amp.
Well, I think the confusion here is the wording, because it is called amp assign. And so immediately you're thinking in your head, okay, I'm trying to convey to my AV receiver what amplifiers I want to power what speakers. I mean, that makes sense conceptually in something called amp assign. But it isn't really what it is. What you really want to do
let's go back to our who was looking for the good thing? Dean. Yeah, listen up.
Right.
Dean, listen up to how easy it is to control your Denon without a harmony.
Yes, well, the X3600H, of course, can go all the way up to powering 9 speakers itself and processing 11 speakers total. At least the X3500H that we recommended to Dean tops out at 7 speakers max, and that's what he's using. So his shouldn't be too confusing on the amp assign, but for Anthony's it is, because Anthony is using 7 speakers, 5.2.2 configuration. He's using 7 speakers, but he has an AV receiver that has 9 amplifiers built in and the ability to process 11 speakers. So what the easiest way to think of this part of things is, how many speakers do I have? Because the amp assign is basically tied to the number of speakers. You'll have options in the X3600H for 11, 9, and then 7 plus zone 2. That's sort of the default, because it's got 9 amps built in, so it's going to use those extra 2 amps for something. So you can say 7 speakers plus zone 2, or you could say 7 speakers plus bi-amplifying my fronts. Don't do that. You can also do like 7 speakers plus I think you can do like zone 2 mono and zone 3 mono, I think is like actually an option. But anyway, leave it at the default in this case, because what is important is telling your Denon X3600 that you have 7 speakers. Because if you tell it you have 9 or 11, it's gonna try and process those, and then it's like, you don't actually have speakers there. I guess I'll turn those off. So what's even more confusing is when you're using an external amplifier, you don't actually have to tell it anything. The pre-outs that connect to that external amp are always active.
Right.
But it does matter how many speakers your AV receiver knows that you have, because it isn't going to make the like second pair of height pre-outs active. It isn't going to make the 10th and 11th speaker pre-outs active when you tell it I only have 7 speakers. Those are the pre-outs that it's going to make active, the 7 speakers. So it is important to match the amplifier assign to the number of speakers that you actually have. Then feel free to connect an external amplifier to any of them, because all the pre-outs are always active. The one place where you do have to say which of my speakers is powered externally is if you say I have 11 speakers.
Right.
Because it only has 9 amps built in, and you have to tell it which 2 of my 11 speakers are definitely powered externally. And they only give you 2 options, either your front left rights or your whatever rear-most overheads are. That could be top middles, top rears, or rear heights. Those are the only options. But you don't have that, Anthony, so just tell your receiver you have 7 speakers and you're good to go.
So this is the first time adding an external amp to a receiver. Does it need to rerun Odyssey? Absolutely.
Yes, you do.
Yes. Just the gain on those amps is going to be different than the gain on
the trim levels will be different, almost certainly.
So you'll need to rerun, yes. After getting the Emotiva app connected, he isn't hearing much of a difference. Is he supposed to? If he cranks it up extremely loud, it does sound cleaner, no distortion, but he was thinking that adding an external amp would make a bigger difference and make his whole system sound punchier. Is that just because the A500 is not the biggest, most powerful amp? Would some other amp be better and deliver more punch? See, this is the great dream and I don't want to say fallacy, but the lie that is told on AV forums all over the world,
and outright stated in reviews.
Yeah,
you see it all the time.
You add the amp, and suddenly your system sounds amazingly different.
Yes,
I can't tell you how many times on this podcast we've told people not to buy amps. It is literally, it's got to be 100 to 1 for people we've actually said, okay, buy an amp. I mean, it's got to be at least 100 to 1, because we don't recommend amps very often, and that's because of this experience right here. This is why we don't recommend amps, because people expect that when you plug an amp in, suddenly your entire system is going to sound like it's a Ferrari revving.
It's been
right?
amped up.
It's been amped. It's got what you have is the ability to play louder and cleaner, which you have determined yourself by adjusting the volume knob up and saying, yes, at this ungodly loud, it does sound better than when I did this without this amp. That's what you bought. If you are sitting within a reasonable distance of your speakers, the amps within your receiver, if you weren't hearing any noise floor, if you weren't hearing any distortion, should sound exactly the same as the Emotiva.
Yes, power is drawn by the speakers. That is the most important thing in understanding why this is the case. And you are not out to lunch.
No.
If you bought a different amp, you'd have the exact same experience again. They sound the same until you get to the extremes. All right, objectively, your X3600H, if all of the speakers, all 9 in fact speakers that can be powered by the X3600, if all of them were being powered simultaneously, you've gone into the party mode where it's just recreating the same sound out of every speaker at the exact same time, it could deliver just shy of 40 watts per speaker continuously. Your X3600 could. Whereas the Emotiva can genuinely deliver a little bit north of 80 watts all the time. Now, that's going to be right about a 3 decibel difference. That Emotiva can power your speakers continuously 3 decibels louder, up at the extreme. We're talking at the loud side, but all the time. And when you're getting close to that sort of range, it should have some lower distortion, and you experience that. But the vast majority of the time, you are not at the extreme output range, and the power is drawn by the speakers. There's a signal that's sent to your speakers, and the speakers take that signal and they request how much power they need from the amplifier to play that signal. And most of the time, that's going to be like 1, 2, maybe 10 watts. That's the vast majority of the time. You're in that type of range. And the X3600 and the Emotiva can both deliver 10 watts to all of your speakers all day long, no problem, well within its range of working properly. And at that point, they sound no different at all.
And I mean, it's in reviews, it's in trade magazines, it's on every forum, it's... you just hear this drilled into you over and over again. Oh, you get an amp, you got more headroom, and that's right. You have more headroom. Yep. You can turn it up louder.
You got 3 decibels for sure, more headroom.
But it just doesn't make the sound it shouldn't make the sound any different. What Rob said, what he alluded to, was that at the extremes, you can buy really expensive amps that you will plug in and go, this sounds different. Mm-hmm. This sounds punchier. This sounds more velvety. This sounds more, laid back. This sounds more bright. Yeah, this sounds EQ'd is what it sounds, because that's what the amp is doing.
There can be that too.
The amp is EQing it in some way. Some design that they have, something they have done to the design is making it sound different.
You'll sometimes get that in like 2-channel integrated amplifiers, because people will still swear by that. I need my 2-channel integrated amplifier for when I'm listening to 2-channel, and my separate surround sound receiver for when I'm listening to surround sound. And sometimes there's little extra hinky things going on in that integrated amp aside from just being a different amplifier. But it's only up at the extremes. The power is drawn by the speakers, and it'll be exactly the same if you switch to another. If you want punchier sound, turn the volume dial up.
That's right. You know, if you want something that sounds different, just EQ it.
That's
true. You know, just go into your Odyssey editor app and say, I want this to have more. I want everything that comes out of my receiver to have a little bit more punch in the bass than goose the bass.
Yep.
I want it to have a little bit more mid-range, goose the mid-range. I want it to be a little bit brighter, goose the treble.
Yep.
You can do that, but don't ask your amp to do it, because your amp, that's not what it's made for. So that's not, you know, so I guess the answer to the question is no. Buying a bigger, better, more watts amp should do absolutely nothing for the sound if it's a well-designed amp.
Yeah.
I don't know where this leaves you with the amp you currently have, but you know what? Amps are like forever. They're fine. So enjoy. I like amps. Blake says 2 years ago, our advice helped him make the decision to buy an SVS PB 4000. He must have a big house.
He does.
After loving that purchase, he bought 7 SVS speakers. He completed his media room about a year ago and has enjoyed it tremendously, so naturally he wants to upgrade. His room is roughly 8,000 cubic feet in total and in a regular shape. We suggested to him previously that one sub in more or less the middle of his back wall and a second sub more or less in the middle of his front wall would likely deliver the best results, even though the subs wouldn't necessarily look centered within his home theater area. They'd be off to the right hand side of the theater area, but more or less centered within the room as a whole. He bought one PP4000 to start and ended up more or less in the middle of his back wall next to his fridge. He is pleased with the bass, but would enjoy even better uniformity, so he tried placing the 10-inch acoustic research sub that he's owned since high school close to his seats, and if he's being honest, he can barely tell if it's turned on until it starts to distort and sound awful when things get loud, so he wants a proper matching sub. Thank God.
Yup.
Thank God that you weren't trying to convince us that this was a good idea, because I would just have to, the little hair I have left, I would have to start pulling out. So yes, that's right. So what he's got is essentially fairly, it's like an big open room. It's a regularly shaped, but if I remember correctly, and like I should probably look at the pictures. Yeah, there's like a central area, and it's kind of like there's a off to the back left, there's like a little bit of an L.
Yeah, there's like a hallway back there, but then there's also an extra open space to the right of what is his theater area. So
right,
yeah,
right. Yeah. So we basically said if you kind of centered them within the entire area, that was probably your best bet for getting good results with your bass.
Yep.
We still won't know. So the best available spot would be directly below his wall mounted front right speaker, and an SVS cylinder would be the perfect form factor, but the bottom of his front right speaker is currently 40 inches off the ground, and the PC4000 is 47 inches tall. Sounds like you're moving a speaker. Anyways, so could a PC2000 or PC2000 Pro work as a bonus? They'd also be less expensive, or should he raise how high his front left right speakers are mounted on the wall to make his PC4000 fit? His PP4000 seems to have headroom still available. What do we say? 8,000 cubic feet. No.
I'd want you to get the 4,000.
I mean, if you said, could I get a 3,000? I'd be like, I guess.
And they don't have a cylinder in the 3,000. So.
Yeah, I guess. But yeah, the PC2000 is just going to get crushed by this room. It won't distort. I mean, it won't distort. It won't break. But it's never going to keep up with that PC4000. It's not going to help. It will be better than the sub that you currently have in there.
It'll be better than the 10-incher, but yeah, it'll be up against its limits. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Right now he has his front left right speakers nicely wall mounted, looks nice, and they're right side up. If you were to raise them 7-8 inches and turn them upside down so that the tweeters are towards the bottom, the height of the tweeters would be right about the same as where they are now. So you would effectively not change your imaging, your sound staging, because most of that comes from the highly directional stuff that's coming from the tweeters. So I would say raise your wall mounts and turn your speakers upside down, because they're bookshelf speakers and it's no problem to do that. The SVSs, they're not going to have a problem being turned upside down.
Right. I actually have my side surround, so the satellite, the prime satellite speakers, I have my side ones lying on their sides.
Yeah.
Because it puts the tweeter a little bit lower.
Yep.
And I saw no reason to put them upside down. I just put them on the sides. I mean, the tweeter doesn't care, right? And just to get them a little bit lower and a little bit closer towards, the where my couches are. So yeah, flipping these over, 100% okay. I like that idea. That's really good. But they are going to be physically higher, and you do have to re-wall mount them. But you don't even have to paint the wall behind them, really, because you're about to put at least on the right side.
On the left-hand side, he will. Yeah, you'll notice it there.
This is an extremely nice home theater.
Oh, it's real nice, yeah.
Really quite nice, yeah. I always want to know, after you do this, that folding card table you've got in the back there with those little plastic chairs, how, like, could you, like, put tape around where their feet are as you start the movie and then see where they end up at the end of the movie? Because I would love to know just the travel distance. Like, you know,
some 4,000s can move some air.
How far they go as you're moving around. So he likes to be able to use the SVS app, particularly if he wants to turn the bass down late at night. With a PC 4000 or a PC 2000 Pro, would it remain just as easy? Or should he should program a sequence in his Harmony to make the adjustment using his Marantz receiver instead? I mean, you could definitely do that. But
not only that, in the Marantz, you don't even have to change the actual subwoofer trim level. If you press
they have a sub button, right?
Yeah, if you press the option button on your Marantz remote, or the option will have been moved over to your Harmony, there's a separate menu in there that temporarily changes you can do your center speaker or you can do your subwoofer in there. And so that way, you're not messing with the calibration of your system. The actual trim levels for your speaker setup remains the same. Temporarily, you can just boost or cut the subwoofer or the center speaker output under the options section. I think that's actually easiest. You could do it through the SVS app, but you have to do one at a time. You can only control one subwoofer at a time. That you get a little drop-down menu when you have more than one SVS sub in the app, and you choose which sub you're controlling at that moment. So, I mean, it's not super difficult if that's still the way you want to do it, but it's not like one button press that does both subs together, whereas on the Marantz it could be. You just press option.
Yeah, and if you do it with the Marantz, you don't have to worry about resetting it back.
That's right.
Which is the
Yeah.
Nice thing.
Yeah.
So he framed the basement himself, and he put Roxwool insulation in all the walls. Inside the room, the only things acting as absorption are his rug, a heavy curtain in the back of his room to cover the windows, and his whole ceiling with absorptive acoustic drop tiles. He hasn't noticed any slap echo, but he's still considered making DIY acoustic panels. However, since he already has all that Roxwool inside the walls, is that doing anything to help the acoustics in this room? And if the Roxwool insulation needs to be exposed, could he potentially make holes in his walls so the Roxwool is exposed and then cover the holes with fabric?
Don't do that second part. Oh my God, don't do it.
Explain that when you're trying to sell the house.
Ooh, don't put holes in your walls. Don't.
Well, okay, so if you were... Okay, first of all, a Helmholtz resonator is a type of bass trap, which basically is some sort of frame, like a square or rectangular frame with plywood or some sort of membrane over the top with holes drilled in it. And what it does, inside this insulation, and what it does is it resonates as the air goes through. You know, and the holes determine the size of the holes, and the number of holes determine, the size of the panel, determine what frequency it resonates at. So I figure if you start drilling holes in your wall, you're going to turn this whole room into a Helmholtz resonator. Well, in between each. Wherever the drywall is secured to the 2x, each those areas would start to vibrate a little bit. I don't know what frequencies it would be, and it would be different frequencies depending on how many holes you put, how it's sized, and that sort of thing, and the how big the area was around. Yeah, that is a nightmarish scenario.
Well, also you now have no soundproofing. You've literally put holes in the thing that causes sound waves to bounce back into the room where they're being generated. You have no sound blockage anymore, having put big holes into your drywall. No. The insulation behind your drywall is not affecting the acoustics inside your room, other than helping it to be a little bit quieter, both inside and outside your theater. It's helping a little bit there, but that is to make sure that sound is not resonating in the cavities of your walls. That's what the insulation inside your walls is for, is to stop sound from resonating inside the cavities of your walls. Do not expose it. Do not put holes in your drywall, and don't expect the insulation inside of your drywall to be affecting the acoustics within your room. No, your plan of making some DIY acoustic panels, that's the way to go here. That's what you want to do. I'm glad that your entire ceiling is acoustic ceiling tiles. That is providing a decent amount, because you've got a large ceiling. So that's providing a decent amount. That's probably why you don't have a terrible slap echo. With all that hardwood flooring area, yeah, you're nowhere near having covered 30% of surfaces in here with absorptive materials, but you've got some wall space. You can make really nice looking panels. You can get printed fabric, images printed on it so it looks like artwork. There's a lot you can do there.
This is all like uniform, one color, whatever.
Yeah.
There's no reason why you can't get panels that they're exact same color.
They could be the exact same color, or they could be an accent color, or they could be artwork. Lots of ways to do it.
I'm going to sneeze. Hold
on. All righty.
Nope. It went away.
All right.
Okay. Wow. That was dramatic. Yeah. Oh, I just want to see the Swiss cheese house when he's done with it, though. Can you imagine?
I don't want to see it. That's a nightmare. Don't do it.
I don't have a slap echo anymore, but every time this particular bass note hits, the entire room shakes, like the walls, everything. Andrew is having a new house built, and the plans include a room beneath his garage. It is almost like a bunker. Well, that's appropriate for this day and time. Please don't fill it with toilet paper. As it is totally enclosed and separate from the rest of the house by 8 inches of concrete and steel construction with a sealed door. Yes, it is not almost like a bunker. It is actually a bunker. You should call it the Bunker Theater. I think it's awesome. The bomb shelter. The bomb shelter in place. Shelter in theater. That's what it's called. He figured he'd be able to completely pressurize this room without ever worrying about bothering the rest of the house. Hey, man, I don't know if that's necessarily the case.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the really big misconceptions that concrete construction, cement foundation is somehow acoustically inert. It absolutely is not. And interestingly, because it's fairly homogeneous in its density, as concrete gets thicker and thicker and thicker, it doesn't really add additional sound isolation. Concrete and cement can move. They can vibrate. They are not inert and totally still. So do not dispense with the idea of still framing inside of this concrete structure and putting insulation into that framing and drywall, perhaps even 2 layers of dry. If you really want to be able to crank things in here and have nobody hear it outside, you can't completely forego all other soundproofing measures just because you have 8-inch thick concrete walls. So just be aware of that, and it's going to come up with what he wants to do next anyway.
Yeah. Just because you got thick walls doesn't mean that they don't transmit sound. I mean, that's what it really comes down to. So the plans for the room, the plans call for the room to be roughly 16 by 20 by 8, and that got him a bit concerned when he started reading about room ratios for acoustics. Are those concerns justified? He can't make the room larger, but he could make it in its interior dimensions smaller. Should he do so, even though he wants to install a full Atmos setup and he would like the room to be as large as the plans will allow? You're gonna, like Rob said, you're gonna end up putting some framing in here anyways. This idea of like the golden ratio and all that other stuff, we've talked about a number of times in this podcast, and even recently with people who are building from the ground up and they've got full reign to do whatever. Should you, what should my ratios be? What should my size be if I want to have 2 rows of seats and I want to make sure the acoustics are as good as possible? It reduces the number of frequencies that interact with each other in the room. Okay, that's what it basically does, just mathematically. And it's great. It helps, certainly. But for me, it would not be the basis of any decision I would make unless I literally could say, all right, well, I want the interior dimensions to be this. Can we do it? And then somebody say, oh, yeah, that's no problem. All right, then. Will it cost me any extra? No, it won't cost you any extra. All right, then. That's literally what would have to happen in order for me to care about this.
Yeah, I mean,
because with our ability now to place subwoofers and know that they are going, especially in a rectangular room, and know that how they're going to act, and know that if we do it properly, we'll get good even bass response across all the seats. I just don't care anymore about these things. I just don't think they matter as much.
I mean, I think he was particularly worried about 16 and 8. 16
8,
feet wide
right,
and 8 feet tall, because that's, even, and you'll have some doubling
they
up.
all divide into 4.
They all divide into 4, so you'll have some doubling up of certain frequencies. Will have stronger room modes. That's mathematically what's going to happen with those dimensions. It's not that we're completely non-concerned. I mean, you don't have a cube, you don't have an actual square, so it's not that, and it's not going to be exactly 16 by 20 by 8. It's not going to be perfect. Also, though, if you take my advice and you do still end up just framing and at least insulation, at least one layer of drywall inside, you're going to end up with something closer to 19 by 15 by 8. At which point, where I'll point you is the room mode calculator over at AM Acoustics, and you can plug your numbers in there and go through their tools, and it lays it out pretty well. But I mean, if you go 15 by 19 by 8, you end up with a pretty darn good result. So I think this almost ends up solving itself just by framing inside your room.
All right, so his current plans include 2 rows of seats with the second row on the riser, and with the room being 20 feet long, he's planned for a distance of 11.5 feet from the front wall for his primary seat so that he avoids being smack dab in the middle of the room. Lengthwise, that put his second row about 2 feet off the back wall, and it doesn't have any plans for an acoustically transparent screen, just a regular fixed frame with tower front speakers on either side and the center speaker below. I'm going to tell you that I think you should go with bookshelves. I'm just going to tell you to stop thinking about tower speakers and start thinking about bookshelves. You have infinitely more ability to place them in that room. You do not need the extra output. I mean, 11.5 is right there at the border, but when you think about where the speaker is actually going to be in relation to your head, it's actually into the room more than that, and can be even more depending on sight lines and stuff. But you can get towers. I'm just saying I wouldn't. He will have a soffit overhead, so the height of the screen is limited by that. He worked out that a 120-inch screen would be the best fit below the soffit, but with the bottom edge high enough off the ground for the center speaker and for the back row to still have good sight lines. What are our thoughts? 120 from 11.5 is fine.
I worked it out. That gives you a 41.5 degree field of view from the front row.
I think that I would like that. I think that other people may think it's too big, and other people may think it's too small. So, yeah.
I mean, I like a 45 degree field of view. That's what I personally like for CinemaScope movies I'm talking about, where they're supposed to look nice and wide. And that would be. So I think your idea of getting a 120-inch screen, spot on. I see no reason to tell you doing differently from that. The height works out perfectly. It's a very reasonable size for this size of theater. I think that's really nice. And I think your seating positions that you've worked out are sensical. I think you've got good logic going on there. You don't want to be smack dab in the middle of the room. All of that makes sense. If you want a 120-inch screen to deliver a slightly larger field of view, and from 10.5 feet, 120 inches would deliver a 45 degree field of view that I would personally like, well, you're building this whole room. It's not that difficult to have the screen mounted 1 foot closer to you. Don't move your seats. Acoustically, nothing has changed. Don't change the screen size. Keep it 120, but I mean, we're literally talking about putting something that the frame can be mounted on that is 1 foot in front of the physical front wall. And you could even now put insulation behind the screen there, even if it's not acoustically transparent, so that you don't have any sort of resonance or triple leaf effect or bass bouncing around back there in behind the screen and the front wall.
I mean, he could, a 1 foot's not really deep enough for it to be a depending on what speakers he got, but it's not really deep enough to be a false wall, but he could build a false wall, essentially.
He could.
Like you said, and then put the screen in it, and then put speaker grill cloth everywhere else, and then just fill the back of it with insulation. And he's got a massive bass trap up front.
You could do that too, yeah. But I would honestly just mount your intended screen 1 foot closer to you. But I mean, that's me. That's if you want a 45 degree field of view.
Right.
41.5 degrees still looks darn nice if that's 11.5 feet away. So yeah, you have the option here.
10.5 would not be. If it's a 19-foot room, 10.5 is not dead smack in the middle of the room anyways. So he could just physically move those chairs closer if he really wanted to.
Could move it to 11 feet.
The screen on the front wall.
And now you're at a 43-degree field of view. Yeah.
I mean, if you're really... You could move everything up, too. I mean, you could get a smaller screen, get a 100-inch screen. Right?
Move everything. Move the seats in front of the center position.
I don't know. In front of the center.
It starts not feeling like the big theater that he has in mind at that point.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, I'm just saying there's options. Matthew bought a new house and he's having the basement finished, including a dedicated home theater room. It's a bit smaller than he was hoping for, but it can be fully enclosed. Finishing height will be 7 feet 9 inches. The shorter length will be just shy of 17 feet, and the longer dimension will be 8 feet 8 inches. There's also a bump
feet, 8
out.
inches.
I'm sorry, 18 feet. Sorry, 8 inches. But there's also a bump out for the only window. There are 3 doors to consider. So here's the layout. Open the entry door, and you'll be in a corner. Look straight ahead. That's a 17-foot length. Look to your left. That's an 18-foot 8-inch length. That is my stomach. And there is a second door at the far end that leads to storage. Okay, so that's at the end of the 18-foot wall.
Yeah, so look to your left. So you've just come through a door. You're looking straight ahead. That's 17 feet straight ahead of you. Over to your left, that's 18 and a half feet, basically. And at the far end of the 18 and a half feet, there's another door over there.
There's a second door at the far end that leads to storage. Looking straight ahead again, that about 4 feet in front of you on the right wall, there's a door to a bedroom. The far wall in front of you extends farther to the left into the window bay.
So it's a slight L shape. So if you just came in the entry door, then the diagonally opposite corner is where the window bay is.
I'm even looking at the plans and it doesn't make any sense to me. So whatever.
Yep.
Here we go.
It's a slightly L shape. Yeah. So yeah, you're coming in the door. So if you're looking at the diagram, there's a washroom that you can see there, bathroom, toilet, sink. And the entry door is just below that washroom in the diagram. So you're coming in there. Diagonally opposite to you from that entry door is the window. To your right is a bedroom. And then way over to your left is another door that goes into the storage. Tom's trying to make sense.
I'm still not seeing it. Wait, which one of these rooms is it? Is it the room on the right?
To the right of the washroom, yeah. So you got stairs in the middle, you got a washroom, and then to the right of that where it says future family room, you've got this, and yeah, that's the room.
Still don't see the other door. I see a door right there that goes to the bedroom, and there's supposed to be a door on the other side. Is that?
Yeah, so above the washroom, there's like a little space there that isn't actually open. There's a door up there. That's storage above the washroom in the diagram. Just above where the bathtub is.
All right, whatever.
That little square up there is a storage area with a door blocking it off.
All right. Don't worry, guys. We're all in the same confused boat. Only Matthew and Rob know what they're talking about.
If you see the one that's all marked up in red, you can see the doors.
That's not helping.
Yeah.
I see the doors, but I mean, I still am missing one.
Well, the bedroom door. The bedroom door is on
I see the bedroom door. I don't see the one on the 18-foot wall. But anyways.
So there's two. There's 2 red swinging doors right there marked up in red. Above and below the washroom.
Oh. Okay, I see it.
There you go.
There's a wall that's not. Oh, okay, whatever. Matthew says he thought long and hard about it and believes his best layout is to have the 18.5-foot wall with the 2 doors as his back wall. So the window bump out would be to the front left, and the door to the bedroom would be on his kind of back right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Since he would still want to be able to get to the door that leads to the storage area, he left a 3-foot walkway along the back wall that puts the back of his planned second row seating a riser 14 feet from the front wall. Then it appears he planned for the riser to only be 4.5 inches deep. So
4.5
teetering
feet
on the edge, 4.5 feet deep. So the teetering on the end of that riser. So his primary seat in the front wall would be basically 9 feet from the screen. It appears in his photos that drywall is already up with holes already made, but perhaps we can discuss the layout a bit anyways. Too late. Okay, so I agree with where you put the screen because it makes the most sense, I think, because I don't understand this room very well.
Honestly, I would have flipped this all 180 degrees. I still would have had...
So that...
Yeah.
But there's a door.
No, but I mean, the distance between the 2 doors... So at the moment, he's got the 18.5-foot wall that has 2 doors in it. The 2 doors are on opposite ends of that 18.5-foot wall. There's a span in between those 2 doors that's like a good 11, 12 feet. That's where I would have put his screen. Like just on the other side of the wall of the bathroom. That's where I would have put his screen. Myself. Because that way you could have your rear row of seats could be basically closer to your back wall. Because the way he has right now, I don't think your seating plan is actually going to work out the way that you're envisioning. They are too squished together.
Now, this is, okay, where Rob and I agree is that you can't have 2 rows of seats. I mean,
not like this.
Not the way this is looking.
You could have 2 rows, like, in a 17-foot-long room, if your second row is just 1 foot away from the back wall, so it's 16...
Or on the back wall.
Or on the back wall, and then, like, you need 6 feet in between 2 rows of seats. I mean, 5.5 at a bare minimum, but 6 feet is comfortable between 2 rows of seats. So if you had one at 10 feet from the screen and another at 16 feet from the screen, that fits within a 17-foot-long room just fine, and you're not sitting smack dab in the middle or any acoustic problems or anything like that. Plus, you would now have the bay where the window is over to your right, which could actually provide you a walkway to get to the riser of the second row, as opposed to having to worry about other, walkway pathways. So I don't know. It might be too late. It looks like the drywall's already up and holes are already cut, but I would have flipped this room around 180 degrees, and I would have had the screen, just on the other side of your washroom in between your 2 doors. That would have been my layout.
Or I would give up the pipe dream of having 2 rows of seats and just get like one big massive couch that goes all the way across with like an L or something.
Yeah, you could do like an L-shaped. Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Yeah,
I would get one. Well, actually, L. How about a U?
Yeah,
that just actually hugs that whole area, and then you put the speakers and everything on that big wall. That's what I would do. But,
agreed.
Because I don't like having the doors in front of me.
Okay.
That would drive me nuts. Anytime somebody walked in the room, I'd be mad at them.
Yeah, I mean, they'd be the front and the left and right front corners is where the doors would be. But okay, I can understand that. That makes sense to me. But yeah, a U-shaped couch makes more sense. Yeah, I wouldn't advise 2 rows in here. Yeah.
No. His plan is to install Klipsch reference Premier in-wall and in-ceiling speakers for all positions. As such, he intends to have acoustically transparent screen. His installer suggested SnapAV Dragonfly AcoustiWeave for $1,800. Matthew had originally envisioned a 120-inch screen, but at only 9 feet away, he admits that he would likely be too large. He says that if he goes to a movie theater, he basically likes to sit in the middle. So he likes a larger field of view. He settled on 110 inches, which would be a 48 field of view from the front row, and a 33-degree field of view for the back row, with his current planned seating distances of people sitting on like stools.
Yeah, which we don't think works. So actually, if you go to a U-shaped couch, that kind of splits the difference, right? It doesn't now need to be 14 feet away because we're not trying to fit in 2 rows anymore. You could put it at a really comfortable, like, what do you want to say, 12 feet? 11?
I mean, he could put it 10 and get up to that 48 that he wants.
Certainly could. He certainly could. Yeah. Everything works out better here if you just go for a not 2 rows of seating. And then, so now, because I mean, originally I was going to say, if he's going 110 inches, I wouldn't even bother with acoustically transparent. I would save the money, and I would still stick, if you like the Klipsch Reference Premier, I like those speakers too, but they have wonderful on-wall versions, and I would have told you to just go with the on-wall versions instead of the in-wall.
I think that you could go with in-walls and just put them on either side of the screen, and you save yourself a bajillion dollars by not having to
go acoustically transparent.
I mean, you could literally save like $700 by not going acoustically transparent.
But you
could save more than that.
Oh, you can save even more. You can go silver ticket, which is no slouch in the performance department, and you can save like over $1,000 on your screen doing that. But if he's now sitting, so if he's sitting 10.5 feet away, 10 feet away, which is entirely doable. You can put your seat where you want if you only got 1 row. If you're doing that, then 120 inches now, great, perfect. And you still don't have to put your speakers behind the screen at 120. If he were to go even, if he would start getting 135, 150, because he wants to put the seats farther back, then it starts to get, like for the center speaker in particular, it starts getting really low or really high. So 120, no acoustically transparent, go to the on walls or stick with the in walls, but just put them around your screen instead of actually behind it. We can save you a pile of money doing that without really sacrificing anything.
I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, well, if it's acoustically transparent, I could put my center channel behind it still, and that would be coming directly from the screen. I'm like, yeah, never, ever gonna sit there and watch a movie with your center channel underneath your screen and go, it's coming from underneath the screen. It's never going to come out of your mouth. I've watched a bajillion movies and TV shows in here. I've had people come from all over the place and watch stuff in here, and they never said, it sounds like the stuff's coming from the floor. No, it doesn't.
And I'm sure some of it was he was worrying about 2 rows of seats and wanting to have the center speaker, higher so that it's not being, the front row isn't acoustically blocking the back. 1 row of seats, we don't have that problem anymore. So, yeah.
So you heard us mention SeymourAV and Elunevision so often. You went to look into those. You saw that with SeymourAV's 2 center stage materials. One's just being at least 10 feet away, while the other ultrafine material says you can be closer without seeing the weave. But both claim to have a little bit of grain. So the viewing angle is not 180 degrees like the SnapAV Dragonfly. And Matthew felt a bit concerned about that. Well, we don't want you to do this anyway, so whatever.
Right.
Let's just go. I'll keep reading. But he called Elunevision, and their rep's information didn't line up with what's listed on their website. The Elunevision rep eventually told him it would be best to set at least 10 feet from their audio weave material to avoid seeing any weave pattern. And they also claim a bit of grain, so the viewing angle is gain. Sorry, I said grain last time. You did. So the viewing angle is less than 180 degrees. Furthermore, since who's sitting 180 degrees?
Yeah, who's sitting literally flush on the edge, looking sideways at this screen? Yeah, that concern.
I mean, if you're going 90 degrees from center, if that's what they're talking about, who's sitting 90 degrees off axis to this thing?
Yeah,
they got bigger problems. First of all, why don't you like them enough to give them a good seat? Let's start with that. Anyways, furthermore, since Matthew is used to an OLED TV now, he wants his projection set up to get as close as to OLED as possible. You need to save money on your screen. The Elunevision rep suggested going with their Aurora 4K ambient light rejecting screen in a completely blacked out room.
I know.
Oh my God. Stop talking to reps. Saying it would deliver even deeper blacks and boost the contrast. And that it's available with perforation, so it's acoustically transparent. The price went way up to $3,500 for that, though. So the SnapAV Dragonfly is $1,800. SeymourAV is $850 or $1,250, depending on the frame. Or the Elunevision 2300, or a whopping $3,500 if he goes for the perforated ambient light rejection option, which should he go for? Oh my
silver ticket.
God.
You should get a 120-inch non-acoustically transparent silver ticket.
He fell down the rabbit hole and hit every rep on the way down. Dude, I have so been here. This is me and amplifiers. This is me, and I need to power my top middles, which are like 4 feet from my stupid head. And I'm eventually looking at the monolith, 12-channel amp going, wait a second. No speaker in my system is more than 9 feet away from me. What am I talking about? Please don't do any of this.
I mean, let's say no matter what we say, he is not going to give up the dream of having his center speaker behind his screen. Like, I'm not going to completely fight you on that, but you could get the SeymourAV in their precision frame, because you don't have to go with them way more expensive. One fixed frame screen, you don't need to go nuts. $850 to me is pretty reasonable. You've saved almost $1,000.
Right.
It's an excellent screen. Well, let's see. He might be sitting farther away now. So if you want to get the Center Stage XD, do not worry about the claimed viewing angle being 160 degrees versus 180 degrees. Nobody is sitting on the front wall looking completely sideways at the screen. So not worried about that at all. I would say go with the SeymourAV here. Or, as we've been saying, you don't even have to do acoustically transparent, at which point go get a silver ticket for like, what, $400? So then you saved a pile.
Yeah.
One of those two.
With the full budget planned out, including a Control 4 installation and equipment rack, and a JVC NX7 for the projector, and Anthem MRX 1120 for the receiver. Why?
Well, actually, that's not bad. That's not out of line, and it has 11 amps built in, so I'm not mad at that Anthem. That's a fine choice.
Right. I have not looked at that Anthem in a while, so I'll defer to my betters on that one. They only plan to buy one SVS. Right. Let's skimp on the subs and then talk to Tom and Rob. He only planned to buy one SVS PC2000 subwoofer right away, although the room will be pre-wired for a second sub. Wiring. See, you get what we talked about, and you get 4 subs and still save money.
You could. Yes. We have saved you enough money on the screen for sure. And actually, you know what? You don't even have to build a riser anymore. So we saved you money there, too.
And whatever that custom itty-bitty chairs for the leprechauns that were sitting in that riser anyways.
Well, maybe
you don't have to pay for the custom-made chairs.
Maybe now the money
that's another 10 grand.
Maybe the money he saved is going to go to a nicer U or L-shaped couch now. So some of that gets eaten up that way. But
all right. All right. He only planned to buy one SVS PC2000 sub right away, though the room will be pre-wired for a second. Wiring will be run inside conduit, but the budget still includes a 35-foot fiber optic HDMI cable, and the in-wall speaker wire is 16.2. He sent the budget write-up. Thoughts? Oh, I didn't look at the budget write-up. I actually looked at the questions this week. I didn't get this far down, though.
Yeah. There were just a handful of things that... So
Let me look.
Yeah.
Well, 16.2, first of all, I don't know that I
16.2.
would... 16.2.
I mean, go at least 14.2.
Can we? Yeah. I mean, it's not like it's gonna cost you a bajillion more dollars.
No,
it's really cheap.
Yeah.
But 16 seems like, is that really where you're gonna skimp?
I know, right? I mean, I'm sure it's what
wire?
the installer just has piles and piles of it
Piles
on hand.
and piles of, yeah.
But I'd go at least 14.2, maybe 12.2. Why not? It's really not that much more money. The fiber optic cable, now they've listed it as being 48 gigabits per second, and I'm sure fiber optic is capable of carrying that, but it's not 48 gigabits per second certified because no HDMI cables are yet. It's only 35 feet long. I don't think you need to spend $420 on your HDMI cable. I think you're being gouged there a little bit. Plus, he said everything's being run inside conduit, so I'm not worried about you putting in an 18 gigabits per second certified HDMI cable right now. It'll totally work for the projector you're buying now, and if you do need to upgrade it, you got conduit, so you're safe. So I would save some money on that HDMI cable. I'd go to Blue Jeans, and I'd get one of their active, Blue Jeans active 35-foot cables. That's what I would do there, and that'll save you, like, $300 on your HDMI cable, so I think that's an easy savings. I mean, the speaker,
a lot of power stuff going on in here that I don't.
Well, yeah, because it's a
understand.
whole rack. He's got a whole rack system, and it's going Control 4 as well. So a lot of it is that, and all of that is pretty reasonable. All that's pretty boilerplate. The price listed on the projector you can get for less, but not installed. So I think it's pretty fair because it's being installed, so they're just charging the full retail. That's okay because the installation's sort of being included in there. So yeah, I don't, all of that looks fine. The HDMI cable you gotta replace, save $300 on that. Upgrade your speaker wire, and you'll be able to afford 2 subs now right away because you're gonna get a much less expensive screen.
Yeah. Yeah, the 16.2 sounds weird. I don't understand that quite as much. I understand the idea of wanting to future-proof your HDMI. Unfortunately, there's not really a way of doing.
Well, conduit is the way to do it. He's got that. So.
Well, that's what I know. I mean, I think he's thinking, I'll buy the expensive one now, then I'll have to buy it again later. I think you are going to be able to buy 2 for less than what you're trying to buy for this one right now. So, yeah. Overall, good plan. We just tore it apart, but you got a good plan. And once you get to SVS subs, and
you talked me out of flipping his whole room around 180 degrees. So there you go. That's a savings.
It's the doors.
Sure.
I get you. Drive me bonkers. And not only that, you're throwing a bunch of light up that direction. You could black out that whole, the area, make it dim or whatever. But doors are always white. I mean, they just are always white or a light color, and they're almost always glossy.
Yeah.
Because
or at least the trim is, if nothing else.
Yeah, the paint is so much. It takes such an abuse that if you don't make the doors glossy, the paint basically just gets destroyed within a year. So I just can't. I couldn't have the doors at the front of the room. DJ says he's only been listening to AVRant for a couple of months now, but he loves our down to earth advice.
Yay!
It's good. It's good.
Thank you, DJ.
It's good. I feel like I'm being mean to people this week, and I'm not meaning to. I'm being.
I don't think we're being
mean
to
help
people.
I'm trying not to.
I don't think
I
so.
feel like
not our listeners.
Like somebody, there's definitely somebody who got his feelings hurt this week. I don't know who.
Not our
somebody
listeners.
In this list is mad.
Maybe the people our listeners are talking to, but they're not listening to us.
Yes. So he belongs to several home theater groups on Facebook, and one of the most common things he comes across is the general "bigger is always better" attitude when it comes to subwoofers. I mean,
sure.
there's physics involved in that. So yes, for his space, DJ has a pair of SVS SB1000 subs. He level matched them, and that resulted in their volume dials being at roughly 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock, basically halfway-ish. And then his auto setup set a subwoofer output to -2. He measured with Room EQ Wizard and with his receiver's volume at reference level. The bass of his main listening position hit 108 throughout most of the sweeps. It did start to roll off at about 35 hertz, and down at 20 hertz, it was about 100 dB. This might be SVS's entry-level subs, but he feels impressed with how they sound and measure. When he checked at these various Facebook groups by most of these groups, most of the "you need huge subs" crowd had their volume dial set to about 9 o'clock, basically about a quarter, and the receivers had set the subwoofer output to -9 or so. DJ can understand that means they have tons of headroom, but is that genuinely useful or necessary? No.
You know the answer to that one, DJ. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there is two parts to a subwoofer, okay? It's loud and low.
Sure.
Those are the two things performance-wise. Well, we're worried about flat as well, but loud and low is what we're talking about here. Okay, so what your bigger or better guys are talking about is, if I get a big subwoofer, it'll be able to play loud and low.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
and by his own measurements, the fact of the matter is, at 20 hertz, he is not objectively hitting full reference volume, which could, in the dedicated low-frequency effects channel, go as high as 115 decibels, although your sweep wouldn't show that. Your sweep would max out at 105. So through most of it down to 35 hertz, his SB1000s are getting actually above the reference sweep. They're getting 108 decibels. And down at 20 hertz, though, it's like, I think he said 98, 99, close to 100 dB at 20 hertz. Objectively speaking, you aren't hitting full reference volume at 20 hertz with SB1000s in your particular room, whatever that room size might be.
So getting a much larger sub, you have the ability to play louder because physics, it's just physics. Plus you could put a big old driver in it, or maybe multiple drivers in it, and a massive amp and all of that. And then a lot of times you can also, not always, also play lower.
Right.
So what we're worried about here is matching the size of the sub to the size of the room.
Yes.
All right. And matching the expectations, your expectations for how low you want to go to what the subwoofer can actually do. What are the things we say? You can get small, low,
cheap,
or cheap. Pick two. You can't get all three of those things.
But Tom and I do also care about 20 hertz output, because both of us got to the stage in our home theater journeys where we got to experience what playing a bass sweep all the way down to 20 hertz, maybe even a couple hertz lower than that, and keeping it at a flat line all the way, no rolling off at 20 hertz, all the way down there. And it's like, yeah, there's some extra little goodness down there sometimes, which once you've heard it, you're like, oh, that's kind of nice. And when it's gone, you go, oh, it's not there. So we do care about 20 hertz output around here. There are people who care about 10 and single-digit hertz output, and Tom and I don't subscribe to that kind of thinking. But 20 hertz we care about.
Nope.
So sometimes we'll be talking about subs where at 50 hertz, they got headroom for days, man. Like, you're not even coming close to using the kind of headroom that they have up at 50 hertz. But in whatever room size we're dealing with, sometimes we're talking to people in 8,000, 10,000 cubic feet, and they're saying they want to hit reference volume, even though that's going to be really unpleasant for the rest of the house. It's like, well, to do that, this is the massive refrigerator size sub you're going to need. And at 50 hertz, you got headroom for days. So yeah, that can be the case.
So he asks, what's the deal? Is it mostly just bragging rights in these Facebook groups? Should he feel inadequate with his dual SB1000s? Or are these other guys actually wasting money using less than the 1/4 of the output of these subwoofers they bought? I mean, honestly, I like the guy who bought the amp and is like, it doesn't really sound that much different. You go into their rooms, and if they have level matched everything properly and they haven't goosed the bass or anything crazy like that, and you are listening to things at the same relative volume, subjective or objective volume, I would imagine that your bass experience in your room and their bass experience in their room is very much the same, as long as not factoring in a bunch of other stuff that would have to be. You are hitting getting a lot of output down at 20 hertz.
Yep.
I would not feel inadequate. They're not necessarily wasting money, but I think more they're wasting space. Like there's like a whole bunch of space in their room that could be used for other things that's being sucked up by massive subwoofers, which are mostly sitting there going, "Oh my God, this is the worst job." It's like working the DMV for them. They don't do anything. You know, they just sit there with all this amplifier power and nothing to do with it.
Yeah,
like, why did I get dual 15-inch drivers installed if I'm not going to ever be able to play anything in a normal size room?
Yeah, no, the lion's share, the vast majority of anything you're listening to, you're getting the experience that was promised by the signal. You're already getting it with your pair of SB1000s.
Right.
There is a little bit way down at 20 hertz where, by your own measurements, there is some restriction in the ability of your dual SB1000s to actually get all the way up to what the signal is calling for you. It's starting to roll off down there. And for some of these Facebook guys, I mean, not only is that what they care about, like I say, they care about 10 hertz, they care about single digit, which I don't, that to me, that's going overkill. I will tell you, to me, that's getting into overkill territory. But you can also sometimes just get that as
overkill. I mean, there's not even anything down there. I mean, there's nothing to play.
But sometimes you can get that as a byproduct of having made sure you can hit 115 decibels at 20 hertz. If that's the objective thing that you've gone for, then as a byproduct, you're going to have output at 10 hertz and you're going to have crazy headroom up at 50 hertz. So I'm not going to say that every person who is espousing this type of thing, I mean, it depends on their room size, but not all of it is crazy overkill. Not all of it is just bragging rights. No. Some of it definitely is. Of course, you've come across that, and you can tell the ones who are like, they've got way too many subs and they're all 21-inch drivers and, they got 4,000 watt amps, and then you find out the room size is, 12 by 13. Like, you know the ones that are just doing it for overkill.
And that's fine. I mean, I think a lot. No, I'm not going to say that. Okay. There is, and I've got no problems with people collecting things. Like people collect stuff, and that's great. And you can collect subwoofers. Just admit that that's what you're doing.
Sure.
I love having a big subwoofer. I know that it's overkill. I just want to, it just makes me feel good. And that's okay. You want to have a massive subwoofer in your room? SVS, if I called them today and said, dude, I want a bigger sub in here, they'd be like, yeah, we're sending it. They would send it to me. I have no need for it, and it doesn't give me any joy. I mean, it would give me a little bit of joy. I'm going to be honest with you. It would probably give me a lot of joy to have two PC 4000 Pros or whatever they're going to call them next when they come out.
The volume dials would be low on those in your room, Tom. They would be low.
I would have a hard time adjusting between 0 and 1 where I would have to send them. This is, but it's not necessarily a waste of money, but what we're saying on this podcast constantly is, we can get you to like those ludicrous levels of performance that these people are going for. We get you 95% of the way there for 95% less money than they spent.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, like in DJ's case, we wouldn't be telling him that what he needs to go do is get PB16 Ultras. We might say, PB1000s would probably get him full reference volume at 20 hertz in his room. So if the SB1000s can get him 100 decibels at 20 hertz, then I'll bet the PB1000s could get him 110, like 110, 111 or something like that, which is reference volume, right? You just have to be above 110 to actually objectively be into reference volume territory. So, that's the type of step that we'd be suggesting to you, DJ. And yes, you're right. If you're like the subs that I have in my room, which have nothing to do with matching them to room size. I got subs that I consider my forever subs. No matter where I go, they're going to be adequate, which is a pair of PC 13 Ultras. What would be PC 4000s now? I'm in a tiny room. I have their volume dials. It goes from 0 to 100. I have them at 4, right? So no, I am not using anywhere near the output capabilities of my subs. It is completely ridiculous, but I didn't get it for any purpose other than I'll never buy subs again. Yeah.
So, I guess I don't know exactly, what you're looking for as far as an answer here. I don't I'm not going to shame them, because I don't necessarily think that there's a lot of stuff in the audio world that's just flat out wrong. That people are selling, are selling snake oil, they're selling expensive cables that don't do anything. I've seen even recently on like Facebook ads showed me something. It was like a $700 power strip that was all in like stainless steel and whatever. I'm like, what could it possibly do? It's a power strip. It doesn't even, it's just a power strip. There's so much bad out there, and having a group that's saying bigger is always better, it's not untrue. It's not an untrue. There is a lot of validity to subwoofer size, relating to its performance. Now, it's not necessarily in the absolute. There's some really badly designed subs out there. You don't brace. You take your big, massive, cardboard box of a sub with no internal bracing. You throw a 15-inch driver in it, and it's and cut a slot port with a router, and it's gonna hustle, whistle and hum and vibrate all over the place. You
absolutely can get subs that are far more output capable than what you need for your current room, like me. I mean, that does exist, absolutely. So it's not the case that always bigger is better. It's unnecessary in cases for sure. But yeah, we're in some middle ground. We're not going to say everybody who's doing that is for certain out to lunch, because it might be for them about getting to 115 decibels at 20 hertz. They've got their room size, and yeah, the volume dial doesn't necessarily have to be turned up that high, because the lion's share is up in the 40 to 80 hertz range.
Right.
But they got piles of headroom there. But to get that 20 hertz stuff, it takes what it takes. It's a lot of air movement.
All right, who do we have left, Rob?
We have Dennis M, Joe T, Ryan T, no relation, David M from Bonnie, Scotland. That's very nice. Ben F, Andrew L, Infinite Gary, and RD.
RD. All right. Research and development. We'll see you next week. All right. I want to thank our 112 patrons over at patreon.com. Thank you for supporting the podcast. And, stay safe, gentlemen and ladies.
Indeed. Patreon.com/AVRant Podcast if you'd like to sign up for a voluntary subscription. 112 patrons over there. Thank you so much for the support. Anyone who would like to send a one-time donation and doesn't want to sign up for a recurring thing on Patreon, if you come to avrant.com, our website, over on the right-hand side, it says Support AVRant, and that link will take you to PayPal.
For AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out. No! Stay in. And listen to some... Man. I didn't even remember. I'm so used to it. Muscle memory. Stay in and listen to something, everyone.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AV Rant.
Now go out and listen to something.